Happy Friday, everyone. Nick from Comic Culture here. We're about to do Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. I just got done reading all my books. I'm going to tell you what I thought about them coming up next. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Nick at Night. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the grading scale here. So as I go through the books, I'm going to populate them on the scale so you can get an overall sense of how I felt about that book compared to the other books that came out that week. So let's get into the big two as we always do. We're going to start with the new number one that came out from Marvel, Daredevil. This is issue number 1. Got that 1 in 25 Stegman variant, which I really enjoy. I actually took it out of the bag and board. I like my comics in good shape if I can keep them that way, especially if they're incentive. So it's going to hurt me to kind of flip through this book a little bit. So I hope you appreciate it. I'm going to do my best not to screw it up. So Chip Zdarsky coming back on Daredevil, which I was really excited about. Marco Cacchetto on the art, which is also phenomenal. And we have Matthew Wilson on the colors. And so we were all kind of wondering how Daredevil would be going forward. We know that the aftermath of Devil's Reign kind of put a lot of things in a weird situation. He's essentially Daredevil all the time now. I'll let you figure out why if you read that run or when you read that run. But we have the new kind of goal for Daredevil and Elektra at this point. They're going after another organization, and it's not too big of a spoiler, I don't think, if you've been following Devil's Reign or Daredevil in general, but they're actually going to go after the Hand next. And so that's a pretty interesting take, because if you're reading Punisher, you kind of know he's kind of like the god of the Hand at the moment, right? He's the demon of the Hand. And so that's kind of an interesting twist. And they actually allude to a little bit of that inside of this book. I'll let you figure out, I'll let you read it for yourself to kind of get the details of that, because I don't want to be too spoilery, but those concepts have been around for a few months now. So hopefully that wasn't shocking to anybody. So it's kind of Matthew kind of setting out on his own as Daredevil. He's going to kind of get back with Elektra, and they're going to kind of set up a home base somewhere, and they run into some old friends, which I think is pretty cool. But Daredevil, he's a little bit worried about leaving Hell's Kitchen right now. He wants to make sure that when he leaves, things don't go to hell. And so he's, teaming up with some guys, making their presence felt, just to kind of, push down the gangs and stuff like that before he kind of goes off. So I do like all the little team ups he has in this book. There's some really cool Elektra moments in here too, which is great. Again, the artwork is incredible with Marco Cacchetto on there. So I'm really glad that he's back in here. We have this mysterious, I guess he's a villain at this point. We have a mysterious villain that I don't know anything about. Interesting power set revealed inside of this book. You almost don't know who it is as you're reading this book, and then there's a big kind of reveal towards the end. So it got me really excited to see where this is going to go, and if this is going to stall Daredevil's plans on kind of getting out and teaming up with Elektra, setting up a home base. But yeah, Daredevil number 1, I would check it out, man. It's coming off of a great Daredevil run. Devil's Reign was fun, at least, I thought. It had some interesting concepts. It had some lasting consequences. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it feels like these events come and go. It didn't really mean anything, but I feel like there's some lasting consequences from Devil's Reign. When I start to think about it, and when I read this book, it's definitely evident in there. But yeah, check out Daredevil number 1 especially if you're into that stuff. And Marco Cacchetto, you gotta love his art. Right. Gently putting my incentive back in the bag. All right, so coming off of Daredevil, we're going to get into Punisher. This is number 4, Jason Aaron on this one. And I've actually been loving this book a lot lately. They took some of the concepts that we kind of known about Punisher. He's just this ruthless, brutal guy. They play around with his childhood a little bit in here. And after reading this book, I'm not exactly sure what's real and what's not. There's a lot of like these memories, a lot of these flashbacks. But there's a little bit of implication here that maybe that's not the case, but maybe I'm reading that wrong. So if you read this issue, let me know what you thought about this. But essentially we have Punisher. He's basically the Hand's demon lord almost, right? He's like one step down. He's kind of like their fist, right? And so he's going on these missions. Everyone's just really thrilled about how bloodthirsty he is, and he's kind of the law and order in the land nearby. And it's funny, but the thing is, he has an issue right now with how the Hand's kind of dealing with the motivation to keep him there. And that motivation is getting a little bit impatient and kind of going crazy and everything. It's very hard to talk about this book in a non-spoilery way. There's reasons why Punisher's doing this. Right? You might think like, why in the world would Punisher team up with the Hand? There's reasons. Are they good reasons? Maybe. Maybe for him they are. Maybe he just had enough and he just wants to kind of go back to the way things were. So so here we are. The problem is we also have Ares, the god of war, asserting his dominance around. He really wants to get Frank Castle. He really wants to get him on his side because, again, Punisher's like one of the ultimate mortals. He's one of the ultimate death machines, right? So it would make sense that Ares would be interested in him as well. So it's a little bit of an interesting power struggle between these two organizations, the Hand and Ares himself. So that was actually pretty cool. The artwork is growing on me. I don't mind it anymore. I don't even see it necessarily anymore. It's never like, well, I wouldn't say never. It's rarely blowing me away in here, but I do understand the style now, and nothing really surprises me. And so that was a big complaint I had in the issue number 1. But we're on issue number 4. It's grown on me a lot. This is one of the best runs, I think, for Marvel out right now. And that kind of says a lot because Marvel has a couple great things out right now. Not a lot, but a couple, right? So issue number 4 of Punisher, I would check it out. Plenty of time to catch up. And if you're a Daredevil fan, we might see some cross-pollination there soon. Check it out. All right, let's stick to the street level guys real quick because I find those guys to be a little bit more interesting. We're going to go into Jed MacKay's Moon Knight issue number 13. This is like a new beginning to a new arc. So if you're interested in jumping into Moon Knight, this might be a good place to jump in, number 13, because we came off of the first 12 issues was like a 2-arc story. And honestly, it was good, but I feel like it lacked a good villain because I just didn't like Zodiac and I didn't like the way that played out. But it did a good job of introducing me to the character and to the power set and to what drives him and, you know, his immediate friends and things like that. So if you're trying to get into the character, start from number 1 and work your way up because it does introduce you to who he is and like the Midnight Mission and things like that. So they accomplished that mission. But this one right here, again, it kind of starts a new story arc. And what's really cool is they try to introduce the new villain. They do introduce the new villain. It's kind of an older villain. They brought up in issue number 1, but they kind of lost that narrative a little bit, and they're picking that vampire narrative back up here in issue 13. But it's like the head of the vampires talking to this other well-known villain, especially in the last couple of years, and that villain's like, dude, I want nothing to do with your revenge mission on Moon Knight because that guy is completely out of his mind. And so that was a really cool interaction, I thought, in the beginning of this. And I like this villain so far, although we don't know a whole lot about him. He's got a good reason to be mad at Moon Knight, and Moon Knight's got a good reason to want to stop him. And I think that dynamic was kind of missing in the first couple of arcs in this run, and so this one has me a little bit more interested. I love the art style. It's maintaining everything I liked about it in the beginning. It's very radiant. Moon Knight's drawn really well. There's a lot of sharp edges with everyone's like capes and hoods and stuff like that, so I do like that. So that's pretty cool. I will say at the end, they introduce a couple more characters because essentially this vampire guy is kind of looking for assistance, trying to look for other bad guys to help him out. He does kind of go down the list, I think, and it feels like he's towards the end of that phone book or whatever that little black book he might have is, because he introduces a few more people towards the back. I believe one is a barely known character and the other one's a new character. So correct me if I'm wrong down below. If you read this issue, let me know what you think about that in here. And then if you're kind of confused about the personalities, I think the next issue, Moon Knight's personalities, I think the next issue is going to have a pretty cool conversation between all of them. So that's going to be kind of neat. So it's got me excited. So main thoughts though are, I like the way that this is starting so far. If you're new to Moon Knight, start over in issue number 1 and kind of blow through those. If you just want to get into Moon Knight and you know his origin and you understand his personalities, jump in on 13. It's a good place to jump in. All right, let's get into some X books now. We have 3 different ones to go over, and I'm trying to think of what's the good order of operations if I was reading these, because I read Immortal X-Men and I also read Hellfire Gala issue number 1, and I'm trying to think back and see which ones would be a good place to start. And I tell you, probably Immortal X-Men first. If you got both of those, you can read Immortal X-Men number 4. I've got the Hellfire variant right here. And so I went ahead and got this one. This one is basically the setup to the Hellfire Gala in a way. It's going to be focusing mostly on Emma Frost and her preparation, her thought process and things like that. But there is a lot of other cool stuff in here with some revelations we had in X-Men around Mr. Sinister and maybe some weird stuff that he's been doing, or maybe he's not been doing in the background. And so we know that he's all about the stealing mutated powers, and he's all about cloning, and he's all about that weird stuff, right? And so there's some pretty cool Mr. Sinister things inside of here as well. So it's a little bit of a combination of leading up to the Hellfire Gala, and then some things we uncovered in, I believe, the X-Men main with Cyclops. He uncovered some things about Mr. Sinister. So Immortal X-Men, not too bad. This is actually, again, main X-Men and Immortal X-Men seem to be my favorite ones so far, and so I would recommend that one. And then leading in from there, you can go into Hellfire Gala issue number 1, and I got that Art Germ cover with Jean on it. This is a hefty boy. It is pretty fun. You do get to see a lot of different characters in here. Of course, they're all dressed up. They're going to the gala. They have all these witty conversations and this banter, and you see Spider-Man and Doctor Doom and things like that. And so it is cool to see all these characters kind of like walk up to each other at a bar and just start, you know, teasing each other in a way, you know? And so, you know, it does have a charm from that perspective. And so, you know, that was at least fun. You know, it's not without its surprises in here. We do get a little bit of a bleed over from X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine. Some of those plot threads over there bleed over a little bit into here. So we get to see some characters we haven't seen in a little while show up in here. We do get a little bit more of what Moira's up to right now. And so she's kind of in a position right now where she's making some moves, and it's interesting moves for sure. So again, if you enjoyed the first gala, if you like seeing some of the playful banter with some of the celebrities that come in, things like that, John Hamm is in here, and I love all of his little parts in here. Dude's a player, and he's definitely racking up some points. And so that was really funny to see. Artwork is okay. It's not spectacular, but it is fun to see all the different mutants and stuff like that, and all the different people that are showing up dressed up in these crazy outfits. So if you got both of these, I would read probably Immortal X-Men first and then Hellfire Gala, but honestly, you can read them probably in any order and you would just be fine. So let me know what you guys thought of this version of the gala so far. And then the other X book we read this week, kind of an X book, was The Eve of Judgment, Avengers, X-Men, and Eternals, Kieran Gillen, number 1. And I gotta be honest with you, I could care less about the Eternals, honestly. Like, the movie barely had me interested, but like I understood what they were trying to do, I suppose, but like my interest in the Eternals is just so low right now. And reading this kind of reminded me of that. Like, I don't really care about any of the characters or anything like that, but essentially they're trying to make amends for some evil deeds that they did in the past with some deviants. Maybe they overcorrected a little bit. Maybe this is an extension of the other Eternals run. I didn't read that. But it looks like they're trying to make amends for some overcorrections, perhaps, that they did. Then, of course, Druig's over here just being a dick and trying to figure out ways of destroying the different mutants and things like that. And, of course, his plan doesn't exactly go the way that he planned it to go. So, I don't know. I didn't really appreciate anything really going on in here, but I didn't read the other Eternals runs, and so, like, this didn't really mean anything to me. Basically, I think we're just going to be reaching out to some more powerful people because Druig just hates mutants and he wants to cure the what are they, excess deviants or something like that, he calls them. And yeah, so that's basically what happens in here. So not a really big fan of this book or Eternals in general, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know if I missed anything else in that book. And the last Marvel book we read this week was Star Wars The Mandalorian issue number 1. And I will say, just watch the first episode of the first season. And there you go, that's that book. Yeah, but no, seriously, it's like panel by panel, frame by frame. It covers the exact same thing that happened in the show. It was cool to see in a comic book form, and maybe I just didn't notice that in the solicitation, but I was expecting something a little bit different, but it's literally page by page. I mean, it's the exact same thing as issue number 1. I don't know if it ends where issue number 1 ends, but yeah, it's literally the first episode of the show in comic book form. So pick it up if you want to. All right, so that was it for Marvel. We're going to jump into DC next. We have Dark Crisis. What is the official word for this? Dark Crisis Worlds Without a Justice League. Superman number 1 from Tom King. And I got this one because I thought it was going to be like this weird, like Elseworld Superman. And I mean, it hell looks like a Robin, Jonathan Kent right there, which is pretty crazy. So I went ahead and got this one because, I mean, I like Tom King. He does some interesting stuff. Some stuff is just like way over my head. Sometimes he twists things and sometimes he overcomplicates things, but like occasionally there's a good story. And so I went ahead and picked this one up because I just want to see what was going on. And I will say that this is actually more of a Jonathan Kent story that I wanted, compared to Son of Kal-El. I wanted Son of Kal-El. It was kind of pitched to us as like, hey, this guy's future is a little bit unknown. He has the potential for extreme chaos and destruction. We need to keep him in check. And so in the first issue, he was like in limbo. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know where to focus his efforts. He was going back to his friends, trying to like figure things out. And then it just took a whole different turn, right? And so I felt like that whole character just, he was going down a path of like an interesting path, but then he went down a whole different path. And so this Jonathan Kent here, it's really kind of cool because he's actually developing his powers and he can kind of hear all the different, cries for help out in the universe. And he's so compelled to go help that he like disobeys orders and takes off, gets his ass kicked, but he does his best to try to fix situations that his dad is kind of, he's kind of understood the fact that he has to stay on Earth and protect the Earth. There's only so much he can do. So he's going to do everything he can do here. Otherwise, if he leaves and his home's going to go to hell, right? So Jonathan's still trying to understand what that means. And so this book is actually broken up into different chapters and it's like different stages of his life. And so now we're kind of rocketing off and doing what we can do out there in the universe, trying to save some stuff. And so I think that's an interesting idea. And I think that's something that we were lacking inside of Son of Kal-El. So I do like that. The art style in here is actually pretty crazy. It's Chris Burnham and Adreno Lucas is on the colors. And this art is pretty gnarly. Let me try to find a cool page here so you can see what's going on here. He's got like his little like Lobo bike. So I think that's pretty awesome. And it gets pretty gory and violent sometimes too, which is really cool, I think, especially in this art style. And I think that's really awesome. So you can see like on this panel, it's almost got like a Daniel Warren Johnson vibe. I know it's pretty like cliche to say, but it is really kind of like sketchy and just gnarly sometimes. And so that's cool. So I think it's an interesting premise. It's an interesting story. There's not a whole lot of meat here, but like that's the basic idea. Jonathan's growing up. He can't help but go help people that are just not on Earth. He can't like suppress those cries that he hears at night, those nightmares that he has. So cool start. I wish it was actually Son of Kal-El that was doing this though. Let me know what you thought. The next DC book we read was Rogues from Joshua Williamson. And we have Leo Max on here and Jason Wordie, I apologize, on the colors on here. And so this is probably one of my other favorite DC books out right now, as well as Batman and World's Finest, in case you wanted to know. But this one is actually pretty cool. It's in this like extra size black label format. So I do like that, especially with some of these pages and stuff. There's some really crazy cool action in here that I think is pretty cool. And so basically this is our heist issue. We've been building up right now. We have our rogues. We got them together. What's made this book really, really special is the different dynamics and the breaths it takes to show you this team and how they're connected and some of their history, which I think is really neat. And so it takes some pauses. It has an interesting pace to it, and it's really built up the characters as a team, and we understand everyone's purpose and why they're there. It makes sense. The heist makes sense. And so this is the moment where they're going to kind of jump in and take what they think is theirs. So it's full of tons and tons of action in here. Of course, there's some betrayals and there's some double crossing and things like that, as we could have possibly imagined when dealing with the rogues. There's a lot of tempers that go out of control in here as well. And we leave ourselves in a position where they have some leverage. They have kind of something that the guerrillas want, that Grodd would want in particular. And so they're trying to get safe passage out of Guerrilla City. So again, very, very interesting book. I would pick this one up for sure if you see these laying around. It's a great character development book. It's a great team development book. And so I was hoping this would be a cool book, and it certainly has been that so far. Issue number 3, check it out. All right, so that's it for the big 2. We're going to dive into some indie books next. And the next one we have is from AWA Upshot. We have New Think. This is New Think 2.0, they call it over here. If you're not into AWA books, I would really check them out. There's been some really good books coming out in the last couple of years. There's a few really cool ongoing ones as well. So I would definitely check out some AWA if you haven't yet. And so the first issue of New Think was more about the fact that like screens have completely taken over everyone's lives. And so that was a pretty cool, like, introspective thing to see, and basically like a commentary on our culture in general. I think I mentioned during that review that I was reading that book and my daughter was actually playing a game on like a little phone next to me, and I went immediately, I just took it away from her because I'm like, you've probably been on this phone way too much today. And so that book definitely had some like immediate reactions, like gut reactions within inside of me. And so that was fun. So what's this one about? This one's nothing to do with that. These seem to be like little one-shots that they're kind of putting out. This one right here is essentially about storytelling and the power of storytelling. There's a lot of metaphors in here. There's a lot of things going on, but basically they portray this town that's really embracing all these different stories from their storytellers. There's stories about grief and there's comedies and all this stuff. But there's some neighboring people, some neighboring powers next door that essentially don't want to hear these kinds of things. They don't enjoy stories. They don't enjoy that liberty, and so they want to take it away. And so they're really oppressive on that front. And so there's probably all sorts of different layers of metaphors and references to some political things in here. There's quite literally some metaphors about throwing stones at glass houses, and so it was a really cool book. I mean, it was as impactful, I would say, as issue number 1 as far as the message they're bringing across. It makes you think about your own actions and how you treat other people and how you think about yourself and everything. So this is a really interesting book to come out and have this kind of commentary. The first one was more about technology and how it's integrated into our lives. This one's more about how we perceive stories and how we perceive each other and how we treat each other. And then just having the basic civil liberties of like free speech. And so it was a pretty powerful book, I thought, pretty interesting. I would check out New Think issue number 2. It doesn't have anything to do with issue number 1, but it's an interesting cultural deep dive. So check it out. All right, and the next book we read this week was Barbaric. This is a one-shot from Vault Comics. This is The Harvest Blades. Again, it's a one-shot, so it's an issue number 1. If you liked what you saw in Barbaric, that run that just ended from Michael Morisi, you're going to love this book here. So it basically picks right up after the first arc. And so our barbarian right now with his inquenchable axe, just kind of doing what they do. They're bound by some kind of law right now that they have to help people that are in need, in real need. And his axe is kind of like his moral compass in a way. He really can't kill anything unless his axe deems them worthy of being killed, I suppose, or deserves to be killed in a way. So it's a really interesting thing. He's a barbarian. He should be able to take out anything, but his axe is really running the show. The sense of humor between these two is what's really make this book really, really fun. And so the axe is always wanting to get in some blood. He's always wanting to, it basically makes him drunk. It like makes him high. It's inquenchable. It's hilarious. And the barbarian's just doing barbarian stuff. So it's pretty interesting. So we have him teaming up with this, essentially like this guild of other characters that comes across. And there's some stereotypical ones. There's like a mage, there's a thief, there's a spoiled kind of a king kind of a guy. And they're going off on this mission because he's compelled to help them because he has to. And so, of course, there's some double crossing and some betrayals and some love interests and things like that. And lots of gore and blood and everything in here. So if you liked the comedy elements of the first run of Barbaric and you enjoyed the art, you liked the banter between the barbarian himself, I think his name is Owen, and the axe, it's filled with that kind of stuff. And it's a one-shot. It feels a little bit more oversized. And maybe that's the case. You know, so it's a good-sized book. It's funny. Art's really fun, and it's everything you liked about the first couple of issues of Barbaric, but blown out in this one shot. So definitely, if you're a Barbaric fan, you need to be picking this one up. All right, let's dip into some Image Comics next. We have Above Snakes from Sean Lewis and Hayden Sherman. This is issue number 1, and so I did not read anything else from this creative team, but I've heard some good things about them. So I was kind of going into this book completely blind, but this book was great. So I would highly recommend this one. But basically, we have almost like a Mandalorian episode in here. We have this lone warrior. He's kind of on this revenge mission right now for some people who actually killed his family. And he's not the only one that's on this revenge mission for these certain bad guys. But he's got some interesting spiritual sidekicks that actually goes with him as well. And so basically, he's traveling from town to town trying to go on this revenge mission, like I said. And the end of the book is pretty fulfilling, but he realizes that he needs to apply these talents that he has elsewhere and just help as many people as he can. So the overall message is really cool. With that said, the execution of this is awesome. I do love that a lot. The color scheme, the artistry in here, it's awesome. It's something I've never really seen before. Let me give you a hint of some of the color palettes they use in here because it's absolutely gorgeous what they use. I'm really, really reminded of like The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. with all these different colors and stuff like that. But the art style, the line work and everything is just really creative and gory and violent and soft all at the same time. It's really strange. I actually really like books that have the main character having some kind of a relationship with like a inanimate object in a way, like we talked about in Barbaric, how he has that relationship with the axe. This character has a very similar relationship with like this ghost vulture that flies around him, providing a little commentary and little quips here and there. So it is pretty awesome. The writing is spectacular in here. The art's spectacular. The coloring is great. I think this is a character that's going to grow and be very interesting as he kind of travels and builds a reputation and gets some more experience under his belt. Pretty cool. If you haven't picked this one up, if you see this one laying around in the shop, definitely give it a try. All right, the next Image book we read was A Town Called Terror, issue number 4 from Steve Niles in Seisman Kurdransky. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one for sure, because there's plenty of opportunity for error in that pronunciation. So we have A Town Called Terror, issue number 4. Again, this is the 4th issue in. It has the exact same strengths and weaknesses as the issues 1, 2, and 3. I don't feel like this is a book that was meant for single issues. In fact, I don't think this was even meant for a comic book format. What I would like to see is a graphic novel that's extra size, like 11 by 17 with this in here, because I think that would be an amazing format to read this in. There's really no paneling. Everything's kind of blended together. Let me show you what I'm talking about when you're looking at this. It's very dark. It's very moody. Things just kind of blur together and blend together, and every single page is like this. And so visually, it's really great. I like the way it looks, but just like the composition and the layouts gets a little bit muddy. And I think this just needs a bigger format to appreciate it. I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. And then the other thing is the pacing of it. There's not a lot that seems to happen from issue to issue, but everything that does happen is at least interesting. And so what you want to do is you don't want the book to end. You want it to keep going. But what, you know, and then it falls at the end of the story, kind of ends in places that don't really make sense. This book, this particular issue, it did make a little bit more sense where they ended, but I think that was just kind of by coincidence because I feel like the other issues didn't find a good spot to land that last page in the issue. But again, it's an interesting story, and there's some pretty cool stuff that happens inside of here for sure. Our main character is on this mission from his father, who he hates, who's essentially like the leader of this, of basically hell on earth. And so he's on this mission. He thought he got out of the family business in a way and started his own life. He gets dragged back in. He gets messed around with the locals. And he's kind of begrudgingly going on this mission because his dad asked him to help his mom. And so kind of all hell breaks loose when he accepts that and understands what that actually means in here. Again, it's beautiful artwork. There's some really cool, just giant splash pages of this really weird, bizarre, hell-like landscapes. But I feel like it just needs a bigger format, and it needs to be a trade. So single issues don't really make sense. If you haven't been picking these up, wait for the trade. And if they do an extra sized version of the trade, definitely pick it up, because I think it's going to be cool. But the single issues are a little bit confusing to me, but it's still a good read. Let me know what you think. All right, and the last Image book, and in fact, the last book we read was 8 Billion Genies from Charles Scholl and Ryan Brown. And I gotta say, 8 Billion Genies is one of my favorite books out right now. It is such a fun ride. I'm glad I took a chance on it. Some of those, new books, those new number ones, they don't really execute as well as you'd hope, but 8 Billion Genies, I think, is a great combination of great storytelling, amazing art, and just like an interesting plot and a great hook that kind of brings you back issue to issue. So basically, to set you up right now, randomly at the same time, everybody on the planet Earth, from babies up to the elderly, have a genie that kind of just all of a sudden pops up and will grant them one wish. And as you can imagine, a lot of people just wish for the most stupid things in the world. I want all the money in the world. I want superpower. I want to be really tall. I want this. I want that. And all of a sudden, all hell starts breaking loose. I want to ride a T-Rex, or I want to fly, or I want something, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, the world just starts going to hell. We have this main cast of characters inside of this bar, and because of the quick wit of the bartender, he puts a wish in place immediately that any wish made outside of this bar cannot affect the things inside the bar. So all the patrons inside are protected as long as they're still inside. And so all hell's breaking loose outside of this bar. And so it's basically an exercise of us understanding who these people are, witnessing all the other wishes that people have made across the world. And we actually get some interesting commentary from the genies themselves on the science maybe, or the rules around all these different wishes that are being made, because they're seeing like news reports of some crazy stuff. Like there's 4 or 5 Mount Dooms that have erupted. They show the picture of the world and it's got arms and legs and there's a big crater taken out of it and it's like smiling and there's all these weird things happening everywhere. So you can just imagine the chaos that's ensuing right now. So it's pretty awesome, I think. Again, the art style is amazing. Let me show you a cool picture of what you can expect art-wise. And so we have one of our characters venturing out in this kind of like Iron Man suit, and then we have all this kind of craziness going on. So color-wise, art-wise, it's brilliant. Loving everything I'm seeing in here. It's extremely creative. I can definitely see this being like a TV show or a movie one day. So I would definitely pick this one up. Issue number 3, it's hard to find, man. Hard to find. There's a lot of heat behind this book. So if you were one of the lucky ones and picked it up from day one, good on you. If not, I'm sure there's some second prints or something like that you can find somewhere. 8 Billion Genies, a great book. Check it out. So that's what I read this week, and those are my thoughts about it. Let me know what your favorite books of the week were down below in the comments. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be notified of future videos. As always, I appreciate you watching. See you in the comments.